Yeah. Yeah, they have different ones, but it's like
It's on my property. Kind of everyday work, but the first time I heard like, that makes sense. Yeah, I get it. Right. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable.
But I remember him just having to.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So we did this.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started.
So did you have? Yeah. So did you have?
Good afternoon, everybody. I know that many people are watching live streaming, so I welcome those who are distant as well as those who are present in the room. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this memorial event for Emerita Chancellor and Dean and Distinguished Professor of Law, Mary Kay Kane. Events such as these are a mixture of despair at the loss of a dear friend and colleague, and gratitude for having had the honor and the privilege of having known such a remarkable person and the opportunity to celebrate her life. I'm going to focus on the celebratory part in my remarks because I owe so much to my having had the honor and privilege of knowing Mary Kay. There's not very much that Mary Kay did not excel at. In fact, the only thing that I can think of that she was truly bad at was playing poker. But even that weakness, she would sometimes turn into a strength. More than once, she caught me unawares, since I had come to believe that she never bluffed, or at least that when she did, she was not very good at it. We never played for much money, but the few times that she got me off guard did cost me a few dollars. I also came to understand that for Mary Kay, winning at poker was not really the point of playing. Our poker games were an opportunity for a group of us to deepen our friendships, founded on a shared sense of professional mission for the school, but friendship nonetheless that grew independent of our professional roles. All of this was done with good humor, excellent pizza, and invariably an excellent bottle of wine or two. Mary Kay, of course, will always be remembered for her contributions to UC Hastings and to the legal profession. We measure here at UC Hastings, we measure faculty by their contributions in teaching, scholarship, and service. By those measures, Mary Kay was truly outstanding. Since her passing, I've heard from literally dozens of her former students, several from her first class at Hastings, who praised her teaching and credited her with setting them on the path of litigation with a passion for civil procedure. And I can tell you that it takes a special teacher indeed to ignite a passion in civil procedure. In scholarship, Mary Kay was second to no one. She is recognized both nationally and internationally as one of the most esteemed scholars in her areas of expertise. And in service as a faculty member, as academic dean, and as chancellor and dean, she was the embodiment of what it means to give back to her law school and her profession. Her list of accomplishments is long and impressive, and I'm sure that others here today will talk about some of them. But I knew her mainly in her roles as academic dean and then chancellor and dean. In those roles, the latter of which I hold now, she was a role model and she was my mentor. She is, without doubt, singularly responsible for shaping the arc of my career. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to visit with Mary Kay several times in the last month of her life. I couldn't say, I couldn't say all that I wanted to say to thank her, but I was able to say a lot. For that, I am profoundly thankful and wish only that it hadn't taken me so long to tell her what she meant to me. It is true, as I said, that we're able to calculate our professional accomplishments in some rough measure. Friendship, however, does not lend itself to measurable quantities. It is assessed in devotion, loyalty, constancy, commitment, and love. It is in those terms I will remember her and cherish the memory of Mary Kay. Sorry. The plan for today is to invite a few guests to speak about their memories of Mary Kay. And we also will invite you to come up and have the mic if you'd like. And a couple of our colleagues asked me if I would read, because they couldn't be here today, letters from them to all of us on this day, marking her life and her accomplishments. The first is from Mark West, who is the Dean at the University of Michigan Law School. Mark writes, oh, thank you. Thank you. Mark writes, I first met Dean Kane in 1997 when I was an entry-level professor candidate. My candidacy put her in the most minor of binds, yet arguably still a bind. She had such loyalty to Hastings, where she was dean, and deep ties to her alma mater, Michigan, which also was recruiting me. Those of you in the Hastings community should know now what has been hidden for nearly 24 years. She recruited me hard. In the end, when I decided that Ann Arbor was the place for me, she of course was congratulatory and wished me all the best. When I became dean at Michigan in 2013, one of my first administrative tasks was to restructure the Dean's Advisory Council to give it a stronger advisory function. I wanted people I knew. Thank you. Clearly, many people had the same thought. Thank you. Returning to Mark's letter, when I became dean at Michigan in 2013, one of my first administrative tasks was to restructure the Dean's Advisory Council to give it a stronger advisory function. I wanted people I knew whose opinion I respected and who would disagree with both each other and with me. So of course I reached out to Mary Kay, who immediately said yes. Mary Kay was always a joy to be around, but she also played a central but not widely known role in decision-making. Essentially, Mary Kay, in the guise of board member, was actually serving as guru, passing notes that made me appear far more insightful than I actually was. When I learned of her passing, I wrote Dean Fagman without thought to say, quote, I feel like I have to be a better dean now, unquote. I wasn't sure what I meant then, but now I know that I felt her absence acutely because we lost both a hero and the element of family that she brought into every room. Mary Kay was extraordinarily generous with several institutions, including her alma mater, Michigan Law. All of us at Michigan Law are enormously grateful, and our community will benefit greatly from her philanthropy. She will continue to inspire all of us to be better. Shauna Marshall, our emerita academic dean and professor of law, had to be in New York, and she asked me some time ago if I would be willing to read something, and I gratefully accepted that. And she writes, from Shauna, I am truly sorry I could not attend this memorial for Mary Kay Kane, and want to thank David Fagman for allowing me to share a few words. Mary Kay and I were indeed the odd couple. Mary Kay was a believer in a traditional legal education, and I was a reformer. She was shy and cautious. I am outgoing and willing to take a risk. Yet we shared a true bond based on our deep commitment to UC Hastings to make it the best law school we could. I am sure I was not the board's first choice to serve as chief academic officer during Mary Kay's last year as chancellor and dean, but she respected the faculty's choice and was determined to see me successfully transition into that role. At first, we held weekly meetings. Those meetings turned into regular afternoon visits. It was the year of the Mary Kay Kane Hall renovation, and the administration had offices in the tower. Around 4 or 4:30, most afternoons, one of us would stroll into the other's apartment to discuss the problems of the day. And then and there, the odd couple became friends. When she stepped down, we began a tradition of having dinner once each semester, always trying new spots. That was another thing we shared, love of good food and good wine. During those dinners, Mary Kay would give her opinion about the changes I wanted to see in the law school, and even if she disagreed with the proposal, she would give me sage advice on how to make it happen and tips on how to persuade certain faculty members who might balk at a new idea. At one dinner, we reversed roles. She was very excited because she had been brought on as an expert in the Madoff case. We talked about an interesting procedural issue that had come up in the case, and she was recommending, of course, another thing we shared, how one could use civil procedure strategically to advance a case. She smiled and said, quote, "Now I am the public interest lawyer and you are the dean," unquote, and we both laughed. The last time I saw Mary Kay was on McAllister Street right before the school closed down for COVID. We agreed to have dinner when the virus cleared. Little did we know that it was going to devastate the world. Little did I know that I would not have the ability to dine with her again. So I guess it was important for me not to miss this opportunity to say, thank you, Mary Kay. I will miss you. I would like to now invite Simona Agnelucci, the Vice Chair of the Hastings Board of Directors, to the podium on behalf of the Board of Directors. Simona?
Hi, everyone, both here in person and virtually, wherever you may be. On behalf of the board, I welcome you and thank you for attending and honoring the life of a truly remarkable woman, Mary Kay Kane. I knew Mary Kay Kane. I can't call her Mary Kay because she was my dean. So I knew Dean Kane as my law school dean when I was a Hastings student. And I've been talking with my fellow board members about their experience working with Dean Kane when they were on the board. And in thinking of what made Dean Kane truly unique, I'm compelled to highlight 4 things about her: her humility, her collaborative leadership, her scholarship, and her generosity. Now, surely, no doubt, it was not easy to be a female leader, and Mary Kay Kane was the first. She broke a glass ceiling, becoming the first female dean of UC Hastings, permanent female dean, after 115 years of male leadership. This was a tremendous accomplishment itself. And what's even more admirable was her humility. She was ever humble about it, always giving credit to others and never self-aggrandizing. Second, her collaborative leadership. When Dean Kane tackled a problem, a legal problem or a college administrative problem or a political problem or a student problem, she skillfully drew out the views of her colleagues and of all of the relevant stakeholders. She saw a path forward, and then she would use her powers of persuasion to convince her audience, always with clear reasoning, step-by-step analysis, compelling conclusions. And my colleagues on the board were commenting to me that they would ask themselves, how is it that we didn't see this so clearly ourselves? It wasn't just the power of her intellect, which was considerable, but it was her calm fortitude and her courage to reason through tough problems collaboratively that made her such a true leader and role model for the board, for the student body, and for her far-reaching community of friends and colleagues. Third, Dean Kane's scholarship. She was a scholar's scholar, and as Dean Fagman noted, her work brought great prestige to the college. But most importantly, her love for the law permeated her teaching, and as a student on campus at the time, I can say excited generations of young students, which, as Dean Fagman noted, is not always easy to do when we're talking about civil procedure. And finally, Dean Kane was the embodiment of generosity. She gave her time to anyone, anytime, anywhere, always without expecting anything in return, without expecting thanks, which is what true generosity is. Her thoughts and her speech reflected a fundamental kindness and a charity. In short, she was the utmost humble public servant to our institution, and for that, she will always be remembered. We miss you, Dean Kane.
Thank you, Simona. I'd like to now invite Cynthia Birmingham up to speak. Cynthia.
Good evening. I am a Hastings alum, but I'm really here to speak about Mary Kay from an entirely different perspective. She became known to our children in our home as Aunt Mary Kay. She was a part of our chosen family. We met because of my dad. He was also a Hastings graduate and involved in 1066 and on the Hastings board. And he and Mary Kay hit it off right off the bat. They strategized on fundraising. They worked on building the parking garage to create the independent stream of income for Hastings. They honestly became comrades in arms. My dad learned along the way that Mary Kay often traveled on Christmas Day because as a widow and an only child, she didn't have special plans. So he suggested to my husband, Rob, and I that we include her in our Christmas dinners. And so tradition was born. She was brilliant, but so easy and unassuming that she fit right into whatever group we had that given year. As some of you heard, she spent more time choosing Christmas presents for our children than Rob and I ever did. And I now understand she even brought it up the topic at her coffees with the professors in the morning, trying to figure out what to get them each year. One thing was certain, our daughter Alana was a pie baker, and she made for Christmas 5 or 6 pies, but never pumpkin. She thought pumpkin was boring, but it was in fact her little brother's favorite. So without a question, Mary Kay came every year for Christmas dinner with a pumpkin pie for our Jack. Rob loved quizzing Mary Kay at those dinners about the most recent Supreme Court decisions, the Madoff trial, her going to the opera with RBG, her phenomenal travels, that lovely Midwestern personality, and her fascinating stories were a wonderful addition to all of our Christmases. At one of those dinners, Rob said, "Mary Kay, would you like to join our annual trip to New York for Thanksgiving?" A new tradition was born. We rendezvoused Thanksgiving night at Bimmelman's Bar at the Carlisle. Mary Kay loved to hear the piano player, and she loved our champagne toasts before dinner. She was just phenomenal. She honestly never asked to be included in anything except once. And interestingly enough, that was our Alana's graduation from college, from BU. This woman who'd sat through so many graduations made the trip to Boston and back in 36 hours just to support our girl on her special day. They were actually very close. Alana loved Mary Kay's style. She loved the perfect solid color outfits, the purses, the jewelry that matched just so, the entire ensemble. Alana also loved what a trailblazer for women Mary Kay was. You know, when you think about it, Mary Kay had such a lovely, understated personality that she rarely got proper credit for being the trailblazer for women that she actually was. At any rate, last Thanksgiving, due to the pandemic, no New York. Our Jack, for his 21st birthday, had gotten a record player. So at cocktail time, 5 of us trooped up to his room with our champagne glasses. And he found an album of Bobby Short playing at the Carlisle, and he put it on for us. And it didn't matter, we weren't at Bemelman's. We had a lovely time. Mary Kay was one of those people who created lovely times for us all. When you think about it, she was honestly very purposeful in creating a wonderfully interesting life for herself too. She set a phenomenal example for our children and actually for each of us as well. Christmas last year, she couldn't go shopping. So she brought Alana a beautiful book Arthur Miller had given her. He evidently collected art from a Japanese artist who specialized in printmaking, and Alana was a printmaking major at BU. So Mary Kay wanted her to have this special book. And of course, she brought with his present Jack's pumpkin pie. So when I told Alana, who lives in London, that her Aunt Mary Kay had passed away, Alana moved into high gear and called her brother Jack, who was interning in New York this summer. Alana insisted he get his roommates in the East Village to put on jackets and ties that very night, go to Bemelman's bar to listen to the piano player, order a glass of champagne, and toast their Aunt Mary Kay. One last thing. Rob and I were talking to Alana, I think Sunday before last, and we heard a buzzer in the background. And so we asked what she was cooking, and she said she was on her 3rd try. She had to have a pumpkin pie for Jack to carry on for her Aunt Mary Kay this Christmas. I wish we used to have a glass of champagne right now and could toast to our family's dear Aunt Mary Kay and the wonderful life that she lived.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'd like to invite Margaret Barrett to speak.
Well, you know, if you want to talk about Mary Kay in a way that really addresses all the things that are worthy of addressing, you would spend multiple hours. And I don't think anybody here would like me to do that. So I'm just going, like Cynthia, to talk about Mary Kay as a friend, because I was not in her field. I knew that she was doing great and wonderful things and getting lots of recognition, but I'm not the best person to discuss that. You know, I think some people misunderstood her. They thought she was standoffish. And, you know, why would you assume she was shy? She could go to the ALI and you know, argue a point with hundreds of judges and top lawyers and faculty from all over the country, you know, and make her point eloquently and well and convincingly. She wasn't ever nervous in a crowd, but, you know, one-on-one, she was shy. You know, she didn't presume that you wanted to have, you know, conversation with her or get to know her. But, you know, once you got past that little step, she was the most loyal and devoted friend that anybody could have. No elitist at all. She was interested and open to people from all walks of life, and she had a lot of friends from all walks of life. Straightforward, earnest, caring, intensely pragmatic, and never attention seeking. She was modest. Everyone who dealt with her realized how bright and capable and talented she was. And she got a great deal of professional recognition, awards, honors, so forth. And I was her close friend, and I never heard about it. except from other people. Or maybe 2 years later when we were having lunch and she mentioned how that flight to Qatar, you know, was this or that. And I'd say, what flight to Qatar? And she'd say, oh, when I was on the board of the University of Qatar, and, you know, all these, you know, things that I'm sure I still don't know. Because she just took it in stride and she wasn't out to impress anybody, really. Tough as nails when she needed to be, but she always strove to be fair. Whatever it was, she wanted input, she wanted to think about it, and she wanted to be fair. And she was. She was immensely talented, but again, let me just digress a moment to say that she was never intimidated by any task. She was asked to do all kinds of new, important, big jobs. And many of us would say, oh, but I've never done that before. Or, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do? Never Mary Kay. You know, she just was not intimidated, and she stepped right in and she did what she needed to do, and she figured it out if it needed figuring, and always finished it very well and right on time. She was really remarkable. Always a professional, but also always a caring friend. Those of you who've had adolescent sons will perhaps relate to this, but I had two, and Mary Kay took the brunt of it. I would email her the various trials and travails. And one time I was so mad at my younger son, who had been, you know, outrageously behaved, and I was angry, very angry. And I sat down and pounded out an email to Mary Kay telling her about how mad I was and what an idiot my son was and this and that. And you know, I sent it, and then later I realized that was a really kind of overbearing, overwhelming sort of email to send her. So I sent her a little follow-up saying, I'm sorry, that was really above and beyond. I didn't want to dump all that on you. And she immediately responded and said, never apologize for telling me anything. I think of you as a sister, and you can tell me anything. And that actually led me to realize that I had always thought of her as a big sister. She took me in when I was first starting to teach. She mentored me. She helped me in so many different ways. And I had such affection for her. It was really, you know, something I should have realized long before. It hadn't been a good year for me. I lost my husband in February after a long illness. And I got to tell you, Mary Kay was there for me in more ways than I can say. And the thing about Mary Kay is she sensed what I needed. You know, some people just, oh, Margaret, you know, and really worried and lamenting, and others were just sort of nervous and didn't know what to say. But she had the perfect balance of caring and letting me know she supported me, but at the same time, knowing when to stop and knowing when to not crowd me and not smother me. She just had that sense. And I think that is the same sense that many of you have probably experienced at one time or another. Eileen Scallon and I had lunch today, and we were talking about Mary Kay, and one of the things Eileen mentioned was that that Mary Kay was so humble that she never really understood how dear and important she was to so many people, and how much people loved her. And I wish somehow that she had had a better sense of that, because I think she was about as good as they get, and I really miss her.
Thank you, Margaret. I'd like to invite David Seward up to speak.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I go way back with Mary Kay, probably not as far back as many of you, but she hired me back in 1994 as CFO. And so we both shared, through the common background, we both grew up on the outskirts of Detroit. Sort of the priests and nuns did their number on us. Strangely enough, we were both graduates of the University of Michigan, but I can guarantee you I did not travel in her academic circles, having struggled through that, whereas I think Mary Kay probably did much better. But I guess having worked with Mary Kay all these years, and I just know of her commitment to Hastings, to the faculty, many of whom are here today, to the students, and she was the most selfless person I have ever met. It was never about Mary Kay. It was never, this or that being, good or bad to her. It was always what was the best for the people that she chose to affiliate with in Hastings. A lot of what we've heard today is, Mary Kay, taking on, familial roles in people's lives. And I thought that was just so appropriate and so fitting and so true, because we were, Mary Kay was the only child, widowed since the late 1980s, 87, something about there. She led a solitary life, but with a lot of people in it, a lot of people who she embraced and took as family, and literally Hastings, the institution, we were her family. We were the good kids and the bad kids, the errant faculty, the unruly CFO, the difficult board of directors, the difficult board of trustees. And Mary Kay just sort of sailed through all that with grace and compassion and modesty, but with levels of accomplishment that were just phenomenal. And to Margaret's point about Mary Kay going into environments and situations that were alien and unknown, the legislature. I mean, Mary Kay, when we started going to the hearings and the like, that was not her natural territory. But she tackled it, she prepared, she engaged, she embraced the process, she built her credibility in the halls of Sacramento, and that's paid off incredibly. With our students, not always seeing eye to eye with them, but supporting them regardless, whether they agreed or disagreed on a particular policy issue, initiative. It didn't really matter, because they were still the students. We have a student who led the opposition to the parking garage, who strangely enough now works for a land use firm, and he's our lawyer. But she was that kind of person. She was magnanimous and warm, and she accepted everybody for who they were. She did not try to change people. She took it all in with the good and the bad, and she was all about the school. And I just can't say how much I miss her and how important she was to this institution and to all of us. And we were literally her family, and I think that's proven itself to be true. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, David. I'd like to invite Leo Martinez up to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. So in October 2019, surely another lifetime ago, Mary Kay spoke here at Hastings on the occasion of my retirement from Hastings. She was eloquent and she was wickedly funny. I was grateful for her presence and for her introduction to that part of a life then unknown to me. Today, I return that favor. Now, I have known of Mary Kay since she and a cadre of women joined the Hastings faculty in the fall of 1976 when I was a second-year student. Then, I had no inkling that she would chair the faculty appointments committee that hired me in 1984, and even less of a clue that I would work closely with her as her academic dean for 12 and a half years. In those 12 and a half years, we shared morning coffee on most work days when we were both in town. It was a respite of sorts, a calm beginning to what were often fraught and hectic days. Even after her retirement, she continued to have that calming effect on me. When my wife and I learned about the death of Justice Ginsburg, it was Mary Kay I called immediately. I called both to console her on the death of a good friend and to discuss the possible Supreme Court realignment. Despite her grief, she was able to make a clear-eyed assessment of the possibilities. This was quintessential Mary Kay. Kay Ryan, a former poet laureate, wrote, "A life should leave deep tracks. The passage of a life should show, it should abrade. And when life stops, a certain space, however small, should be left scarred by the grand and damaging parade." Mary Kay did leave deep tracks. The spaces she scarred, civil procedure, legal education, and Hastings, were large spaces, each in itself, each showing the passage of a meaningful life. The small spaces she scarred, my own life included, had equally consequential effects. How fortunate for me, how fortunate for us that our paths cross. She was a giant in legal education, but more importantly, she was a great mentor, an even better friend. Like Margaret, this has been a rough week for me. I lost my 89-year-old sister in July. Her service was on Tuesday. But I am struck of the similarities of these two fabulous women. They were both unbelievable friends, unbelievable mentors, and unbelievable people. I end by confessing my denial. I have to confess that I have yet to accept Mary Kay is gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Rio. We received one video and we put together a video that we're going to show now. And then after that, I would like to invite anyone who would like to come up and say a few words, that you're welcome. If not, that of course is okay as well. The first video is from David Levy, former dean of Duke University, professor of law there, president of the ALI. He has written me several times about how deeply he misses Mary Kay and how he wanted to be here to be with us, but because of COVID, was not able to travel. So he asked what he could do, and I said I could read something, or you could send a video. And he said, I would like to send something on behalf of myself and the ALI. So we will start with David Levy. And then second, we were honored, and Mary Kay was honored by Senator Thomas Umberg closing the legislative session in honor of Mary Kay Kane. And we have that video that we'll show as well.
For the past 25 years, Mary Kay Kane has been special people to turn to. So admirable was she in character, judgment, and intellect. I first met her sometime in the 1990s when I was a judge in the Eastern District of California, but I knew her by reputation for a much longer time. My uncle, Julian Levy, was a proud member of the 65 Club at Hastings, and he absolutely adored the school and he adored his dean. He was a different generation of law professor, the kind that want you to read their exam questions while they watch you, smiling to themselves at the clever little jokes that have sickened generations of law students. So I knew Mary Kay was something very special when I heard Julian rhapsodize about her as his dean. After I came to know her, I realized how completely accurate the advance billing had been. Mary Kay and I served together on the Standing Committee on Rules of Practice and Procedure of the United States Judicial Conference, where her deep and matchless insight into civil procedure was simply invaluable. Her skill at navigating difficult technical issues, persuading and bringing along persnickety proceduralists, and coming up with pragmatic compromises was on full display, particularly during the Rules Committee's restyling project, in which the rules were rewritten to promote clarity without, so we hoped, altering substance. As chair of the committee, I often turned to Mary Kay for the winning solution, the balanced and thoughtful comment that could move a discussion to resolution. In her, EQ and IQ were intertwined together with her modesty and graciousness. Later, I drew on Mary Kay's deep understanding of law school administration and leadership. She had recently stepped down after her distinguished and transformative 13 years as dean at Hastings, when I became the dean at Duke Law School. I found her advice on all matters decanal to be just so spot on and always delivered with just the right tone. And she and I have been long-serving members together on the Council of the American Law Institute. Mary Kay was such a dedicated member of the Council and the Institute more generally. She gave countless hours to all of ALI's projects and served as an advisor on the Uniform Commercial Code, Restatement 4th Conflict of Laws, Restatement 3rd Torts, Apportionment of Liability, and Principles of Transnational Civil Procedure. She was also the co-reporter for the Complex Litigation Project. As a council member, she served on various council committees, including the 100th anniversary, development, membership, and executive committees, among others. A few years ago, I emailed Mary Kay to ask if she would serve on the membership committee. I noted that I had sat on this very same committee and that candor requires me to say that it is a fair amount of work. She replied, "Thanks for the candor, but I am willing to share the burdens as well as the pleasures of being on the council, so sign me up." That response was just so typical of Mary Kay, and in a way, it just says it all about her. She was more than willing to share the burdens and to do the hard work because she took such real pleasure and pride in the mission, the work, and the fellowship. The pleasure and happiness she experienced in doing this work was evident for all to see, and was one of the many reasons that she was such a superb colleague. She and Ed Cooper wheedled, Ed's word, their way on as advisors to the Restatement of Torts 3rd on the pretext, also Ed's word, that it would be good to have a couple of proceduralists in the crowd. As Ed explains, our real motive was expecting it to be pure fun. Perhaps not everyone would experience the torts restatement as pure fun, but there is no doubt that Mary Kay and Ed did. In fact, my predecessor as president, Roberta Ramo, recalls discussing the torts restatement with Mary Kay in a very fancy shoe store in San Francisco, where they happened to meet. Mary Kay had a brilliant idea for moving the restatement forward. As Roberta recalls, Mary Kay said, "The way to move the project forward is to leave the shoe store and go have a real chocolate tort at the Campton Place next door." And that's just what they did. Needless to say, both the torts project and the real tort were finished in short order. In all of these different settings, whenever Mary Kay spoke, the rest of us listened with unusually close attention. So balanced and thoughtful were her comments, so total was our confidence in her abiding good judgment. Whether Mary Kay ever realized how much we relied on her is not clear to me. I hope she did, But as Judge Mary Schroeder observes, Mary Kay was a person of genuine humility who was devoted to service. I doubt she ever comprehended how deeply she was admired by her students and colleagues. My last conversation with Mary Kay was on Zoom. Ricky Revez, our wonderful ALI director, and I were discussing with her how she might like to participate in the 100th anniversary campaign for the ALI. She had already created a director's discretionary fund named for her close friend and colleague and our former revered director, Jeff Hazard. Of course, she wanted to know what more she could do that would be most helpful to the Institute. And then with little fanfare, she let us know that she had already arranged for a bequest that would become a historic gift to the ALI. We were astonished and delighted and set our minds to thinking how best we could celebrate her and thank her for her generosity. Sadly, we had no idea, nor did she, that she was already so gravely ill. It seems fit and proper to end with a quotation from one of our great justices. Officiating at a wedding in 1931, Justice Cardozo spoke of the three great mysteries in the lives of mortal beings: the mystery of birth at the beginning, the mystery of death at the end, and greater than either, the mystery of love. Everything that is most precious in life is a form of love. Art is a form of love, if it be noble. Labor is a form of love, if it be worthy. Thought is a form of love, if it be inspired. We will miss our wonderful friend and colleague. We will treasure the love, dedication, and example of cheerful service she brought to us over so many years.
Madam President and colleagues, it's with great sadness that I rise to honor the life of Mary Kay Kane, former Dean of the University of California, Hastings College of Law. I'm a graduate of Hastings, and as such, it's even a greater honor to recognize her here in the California State Senate. Dean Kane was born and raised in Detroit. She was a graduate of the University of Michigan with both a BA in English and a JD in 1971. After graduating, she became co-director at a National Science Foundation project on privacy and social science research data. She began teaching in 1974 at the State University of New York, and 3 years later she came to Hastings. Civil procedure was Mary Kay Kane's area of interest and expertise. And she has a number of students today who are litigators who still recall the lessons that were taught by Dean Kane. She co-authored the Hornbook on civil procedure and Hornbook on the law of federal courts, as well as a number of other treatises. She served as co-reporter of the American Law's Institute of Complex Litigation Project and developed proposals for handling multi-party, multi-forum disputes in federal and state courts. After more than a decade on the faculty of Hastings, she became the academic dean in 1990 and the overall dean of UC Hastings, and was the first female dean in over 115 years, where previously men had all filled that position. She was a person who made a difference in San Francisco, made a difference in the law, but most importantly, made a difference in countless students' lives and their dedication to the profession. Thank you, colleagues, for giving me a moment to recognize Dean Kane and to adjourn in her memory.
this was sometime in the late 70s, yelled at her and said, you're a law professor? And she sort of ignored the person and kept walking. And he said, you're a law professor? Do you teach law? And she just kept walking, tried to ignore him a little bit. Something happened, an interesting procedure point, she always responded. And a couple of years ago, I was using the Hastings Library. I live in the East Bay, but I was using the Hastings Library while I was writing a brief. And I left and walked across to what we used to call the old building. I don't know what it's called now. Pardon? We, what's it called?
It's demolished?
Yikes. Well, it was there a couple of years ago. And she had her office there. And I asked the guard, I said, would you tell, is Dean Kane in? Yes. Would you tell her that a former student wants to talk to her? And he looked at me and went over and made the call and then came back and said, go on up. So I did. And I don't know if I imagined that she would remember me or not, but of course she didn't. But she was completely polite, very pleasant. And like I say, she, if not standoffish, she was very intimidating as a professor. But when I told her I was a class of '82, she said, oh, I had just started then. I had no idea what I was doing. I was very, very nervous. You absolutely couldn't tell. She talked about how terrified she was the day that she was to be evaluated by the faculty. Rudolph Schlesinger was going to come in and sit in the back. And she said, I was so scared that class before I took the 4 best students and told them I was going to call on them when Professor Schlesinger was there. She was very gracious. I told her, she said, why are you over here if you live in the East Bay? I said, and this is true, I said, actually, the Hastings Library is much more user-friendly than the Berkeley Library. She was so pleased to hear that. You could just, she just beamed to hear that. She was very self-effacing, as you said, but I asked her how the Wright and Miller books were going, and she pointed at the wall at all the Wright and Miller, which are now Wright, Miller, and Kane. We talked about Hastings in the school and how it was doing. When I told her that my tuition in 1979 was $350 a semester, she was staggered. She did not, and frankly, I'm staggered to think it. She did not remember that at all. Anyway, I'm glad you're doing this memorial. She was a great teacher. There's 5 or 6 of us from Section C in the class of 1982 who've come for this memorial. So thanks for doing it. Thanks so much.
Please just come to the microphone if you'd like to talk. And I should explain for those that are new back to the campus, 198 McAllister, where Mary Kay had her office, was demolished to build a brand new building. So that's why it is gone. But I did have the honor of sharing the office next to Mary Kay in that building just before it was knocked down and before it became dean. Okay, please.
Hi, everybody. This has been so great to hear all of the wonderful law stories and background. I'm representing her musical interests. I'm Bill Luth, the president of KDFC Radio, your new neighbors just down the street, and we're moving into the new Bow Center across from Davies Symphony Hall. Mary Kane has been a big supporter of what we do for many years. And I don't know if you all know this, but she was almost not a lawyer, but a pianist, and was accepted to Juilliard when she was young and was a terrific musician. And it was mentioned how she loved music. And she had a big impact on what we do. In fact, I just wanted to share with you that most people don't know, a couple people in this room do. We didn't know, like many of you, we didn't know her health was failing there towards the end, but we had been in talks about what she could do to participate in our new building. She wanted to make some sort of a gift to our new building project. And we thought, hey, we're getting a brand new piano. And we are honored to say it is in her name. Her gift has the name Mary Kay Kane on our brand new beautiful grand piano in our space. I hope you'll come visit.
So I don't want to preempt anybody that might want to come up, but we do have a wonderful reception on the new quad that those of you from the class of 82, was it, might call the new beach. We're happy to take either, but you're all invited to join us to tell stories informally and just have an opportunity to talk to each other. So thank you all for coming. We deeply appreciate your being here and seeing you, and we thank you for your support. Okay, have a good night.